You open the envelope from the brokerage in April, and there is a number circled at the bottom that you never asked for. Not a bill, a requirement. Somewhere, a formula decided exactly how much of your own savings you are required to pull out this year, whether you need it or not. James got that same envelope 2 years ago and almost missed what it actually meant. He is not careless. He is careful. That is exactly why it caught him off guard. Here's the part almost nobody tells you before it happens. Most retirees never choose their own withdrawal number. They take whatever the letter says and call it safe. I call that the default number, and by the end of this, you will understand exactly why the default number is quietly the most expensive number in your entire retirement. Stay with me for the next few minutes, because there are 2 mistakes hiding inside this rule that cost real money. One about timing, and one about how a person feels about their own savings. And almost nobody catches either one until it is already too late to undo it. Let me walk through this slowly, because nobody sat any of us down and explained it properly. When you put money into a traditional IRA, an old employer plan, or a similar tax-deferred account, the government let you skip the tax on the way in. That was the deal. But the deal has a second half. At some point, the government wants its share, so the rules require you to start pulling a minimum amount out every single year. That minimum is your required distribution. Miss it, delay it wrong, or misunderstand which accounts it touches, and the mistake compounds quietly for years before you ever see the damage on paper. Reason 1, this trips people up. The starting age is not what most people assume. If you are a typical retiree right now, your first required withdrawal year is the year you turn 73. If you were born in 1960 or later, that starting age moves out to 75. In your very first required year, you actually get a choice nobody explains clearly. You can take that first withdrawal by the end of that year, or you can push it out to the spring of the following year. Here is the catch almost everyone misses. If you push that first one out, the second one is still due on schedule that same year. So the person who thought they were being cautious by delaying ends up taking 2 withdrawals in 1 calendar year instead of 1. That can shove you into a higher tax bracket, make more of your Social Security taxable, and raise what you pay for Medicare, all in a single year, from one delay that felt like the responsible choice. Reason 2, the math behind the number changes every single year, and almost nobody realizes it is designed to grow. Each year, your provider looks at your account balance from the end of the prior year, divides it by a life expectancy figure tied to your age, and that gives you the minimum. In your early 70s, that works out to somewhere around 4% of the account. By your 80s and 90s, that percentage keeps climbing higher. The government is not just asking for a fixed slice, it is asking for a growing slice, every year, for the rest of your life. Reason 3, missing it is expensive, but it is not the disaster it used to be. The old penalty was 50% of whatever you failed to withdraw. Under the current rules, it typically drops to 25%, and if you catch the mistake and correct it quickly with the right paperwork, it can fall to 10%, sometimes less. Serious? Yes. Hopeless? No. This is fixable if you act instead of freezing. Reason 4, and this is where James almost got tangled. Not every account follows the same math. If you have several traditional IRAs, you can calculate each one separately, add the totals together, and withdraw that combined number from just one of them, or split it however you want. Old employer plans do not work that way. If you have 2 old plans sitting with 2 different companies, each one generally has to satisfy its own required amount on its own. You cannot cover one plan's requirement by pulling extra from the other. And if you are married, this is not a household number. Margaret's required withdrawal is calculated on her own accounts and her own age. It has nothing to do with James's. One spouse cannot quietly cover the other's requirement by taking a bigger withdrawal from their own side. Margaret found that out the hard way when she assumed a larger draw from James's account would settle both of theirs for the year. It did not. Reason 5. The still working exception gets stretched way past what it actually covers. If you are still working past the usual starting age, You may be able to delay the requirement on your current employer's plan, as long as the plan allows it and you own less than 5% of the company. People hear that and assume it protects everything, including old accounts from previous jobs and any personal IRAs. It does not. Those still follow the normal schedule, untouched by the fact that you happen to still be working somewhere else. Reason 6. The Roth confusion. Your own Roth IRA has never had a required withdrawal. As of 2024, a Roth version of an employer plan generally does not either, for the original owner. But an inherited Roth is a different animal, often with its own 10-year window to empty the account, even without an annual minimum along the way. And one more trap tucked inside this. You cannot take your required withdrawal and then turn around and call that same money a Roth conversion. The required amount has to come out first, untouched, and only whatever you withdraw above that minimum is eligible to convert. Take a breath here. Nobody is expected to hold all 6 of these in their head at once. What matters is that you now know the shape of the trap, and that is more than most people ever get. Here is something most people never hear at all. You have far more flexibility in how you take this money than the letter makes it sound. You can take it monthly, quarterly, or all at once, as long as the full amount is out by the deadline. It is a floor, not a ceiling. There is no penalty for taking more, and you are not required to sell everything to cash. Some providers allow what is called an in-kind withdrawal, where you move the actual shares or fund out of the retirement account and into a regular brokerage account instead. The value still counts toward your requirement and your taxable income, but you stay invested the whole time instead of cashing out at whatever the market happens to be doing that week. If any of this is clicking into place for you, a like on this video actually helps more than people realize. It tells the algorithm that this kind of explanation is worth showing to someone else, sitting exactly where you are right now. Now here is the mistake that has nothing to do with the rules themselves, and it is the one I actually worry about the most. Most retirees are naturally cautious. Nobody wants to run out of money. Nobody wants to become a burden. So when that letter arrives, the instinct is to treat the required minimum as the whole plan. Take exactly what the government asks for, not $1 more, and call that discipline. It feels responsible. It is actually the opposite of a plan. It is the absence of one, dressed up to look like caution. That is the default number working exactly as designed. It was never built around what your retirement should look like. It was built around what the government is owed. Treating those as the same thing is how people who did everything right end up underspending in their 60s and 70s. The years they actually have the health and the energy to enjoy it, only to get pushed into much larger, much less comfortable withdrawals in their 80s and 90s, once the percentage has climbed and the choice has been made for them instead of by them. If you have not subscribed yet, this is a good moment to fix that. New breakdowns like this go up every week, and retirement planning is exactly the kind of thing that rewards staying a little ahead of the letter instead of just reacting to it. Let's talk about the tools that put you back in the driver's seat, because there are more of them than most people are ever shown. The first is a Roth conversion, done on purpose and in small pieces. You move money from a traditional account into a Roth, pay the tax on it now, and from that point forward it grows without ever owing a required withdrawal again. The window where this works best is usually right after full-time work ends, before the required withdrawals start, and before Social Security kicks in, when income is naturally lower for a stretch of years. That gap is worth using on purpose, instead of letting it pass by empty. Convert too aggressively in 1 year though, and you can shove yourself into a higher bracket or trigger higher Medicare premiums. So this is not a one-time decision. It is a careful one, usually worth a real conversation with a tax professional rather than a guess. The second tool is timing Social Security around that same window. Some retirees stop full-time work but hold off on claiming Social Security until as late as 70, living instead off taxable savings or part-time income during those years. That stretch of lower income becomes exactly the window to run those careful Roth conversions in. The result, when it works, is a smaller required withdrawal later, a larger Social Security check for the rest of your life, and meaningfully more control over what you owe in taxes, across the whole retirement. The third is thinking in buckets, instead of one big pile, a taxable bucket. A tax-deferred bucket, the traditional IRA and old employer plan money, and a tax-free bucket, the Roth. Spending more from the taxable bucket early, doing modest conversions into the Roth bucket along the way, and letting the Roth sit and grow as the last bucket you touch, tends to keep the required withdrawal number smaller and steadier for longer. The fourth is the qualified charitable distribution, and almost nobody hears about this one from the letter that shows up in April. If you are 70 and a half or older and you already give to charity, you can send money directly from your IRA to a qualified charity. It satisfies part or all of your required withdrawal for the year, but it is not added to your taxable income the way a normal withdrawal would be. That can lower what you owe, lower how much of your Social Security gets taxed, and lower your odds of a Medicare surcharge, all from redirecting money you were already planning to give away regardless. The fifth is making full use of the still working exception, carefully, and only where it actually applies. If the plan allows it and the ownership limit is met, some people even roll old employer accounts into their current plan before their required age, so that money gets covered by the same exception too. Any amount already due has to come out first, but the coordination itself can meaningfully delay the pressure on other accounts. And the sixth, for people who want a guaranteed check no matter what the market is doing, is a tool called a qualified longevity annuity contract, sometimes paired with other income annuities. Money placed into one of these is excluded from the required withdrawal calculation until a later age, often 80 or 85, at which point it starts paying a guaranteed monthly income. It trades away some liquidity and flexibility in exchange for a number that shows up every month, no matter what happens in the markets. Not the right fit for everyone, but worth knowing it exists before deciding it is not for you. If a video like this is the kind of thing that helps you stay ahead of your own retirement, instead of just reacting to whatever letter shows up next, subscribing means you will not miss the next one. New videos go up every week. Let's bring this together. A required withdrawal starts at 73 for most people right now, 75 if you were born in 1960 or later. It is recalculated every year and grows as a percentage as you age. Missing it now typically costs 25% of the shortfall, correctable down to 10% if you fix it quickly. IRAs can be combined for withdrawal purposes. Old employer plans generally cannot. Spouses are calculated separately, always. The still working exception only covers your current employer's plan, nothing else. Your own Roth accounts have never had this requirement, and inherited Roths follow a different set of rules entirely. And underneath all of it sits the real mistake, the one that has nothing to do with any of these numbers, treating the government's minimum as if it were your actual retirement plan, instead of just the floor the government happens to require. You are allowed to take more than the minimum. You are allowed to spend on the years you actually have the health to enjoy, instead of saving everything for a version of retirement that keeps getting pushed further out. And you are allowed to make an honest mistake along the way and simply correct it, the way James did, the way Margaret did, without either of them turning it into a crisis. Before you go, think about it honestly. Has someone close to you gone through exactly this, taking whatever the letter said without ever really understanding it? A parent, a sibling, someone you assumed had it handled because they never brought it up. Most people who make this mistake never talk about it, which is exactly why it keeps happening quietly, one household at a time. So here is one small, no-pressure step for this week. Sometime when you have a few quiet minutes, write down every retirement account you have, whose name is on it, and roughly what age you are pulling from it now or will be soon. Then take that list to whoever handles your taxes or your investments and ask them one direct question. Am I actually handling my required withdrawals the right way, or am I just doing whatever the letter says? That single question, asked once, can be worth more than years of quietly assuming the default number was ever the safe choice to begin with. If any of this helped make something clearer that you had been wondering about, share it with someone getting close to this stage of retirement. It is the kind of thing that is much easier to hear from someone else first, before the letter ever shows up. This is the quiet position. not the minimum someone else decided for you. The number you actually chose, on purpose, with your eyes open.